So let's look at a couple programs today that print the lyrics to some children's songs. So in this first one, um, I'm printing the lyrics to Old MacDonald Had a Farm, and it should be obvious how it works. It's nothing but a bunch of print statements. And, so each time I wanted to add an animal to it, all I do is just take the block of code, copy paste it, and then go swap out the animal and swap out the sound, and then the song gets longer. But there's a little bit of a problem with that when it comes to writing good code. All right, one thing that we should notice is, there's a lot of repetition here, and when you start seeing a lot of repetition in your code, um, that should be a clue that maybe there's a better way to structure your program to eliminate that repetition. Um, the other problem we have is when we have a block of code that we're copying and pasting over and over again and just making minor changes, it really does present an opportunity to introduce bugs into the program. And so, like, for example, I do have a bug in this program because I just copy pasted and swapped it, the duck to the cow, and I copy pasted the cow and I changed it to a pig. And if I look in here, I'm just swapping out the moos to the oinks and the cow to the pig, and there's my mistake. I left a moo in. And this, it doesn't matter if you're a new programmer or an experienced programmer, this will happen to you when you're just trying to keep up with multiple chunks of code that are really nearly the same. So let's look at a different way I could structure this program that's going to make it a little bit more efficient and a little bit easier to maintain. So, all right. So I'm going to go to Old MacDonald version 1 now. And I'll pull them up. So we'll kind of look at what I did here. And each verse has like 3 parts. They basically do the E-I-E-I-O. You do a hada, you do the sound lines, and then you do an E-I-E-I-O again. So what I did is I made 3 functions. And the 3 functions are, so this first one, E-I-E-I-O, is the same every single time. But the hada function, right, it's the same except for the animal gets swapped out. And then the sound function the witha is the same all the time, except for it's just a different sound that gets printed. So let's think about how this program would execute. All right, the functions are at the top, but when you go to run, right, so the output is identical. I just have more verses in this one. But the flow is a little bit different. So now, right, when you go to run, these lines, the functions get stored in memory, but they don't get executed right away. The very first line that actually gets executed is this one that's tabbed all the way flush to the left, and it prints the title on the screen. And then we go to the E-I-E-I-O statement, and this gets executed. And notice how there's no arguments in the parentheses here, and that's because the E-I-E-I-O doesn't need any special instructions. It's always the same. So what happens, it goes from here, and then it goes into this function, and it executes this line of code. When the E-I-E-I-O function finishes, it comes down, and it does the next thing after E-I-E-I-O, which is the hada function. And it goes up, and this time we're passing the argument duck into the animal variable. And it prints, only it'll print duck. So, and then once this code finishes executing, it comes down and it does the witha function, and we pass in the word quack to the sound variable, and it does this print statement with quack, and it does this print statement with quack. And when witha's finished, it comes down here and it does E-I-E-I-O again, and we go up and we print that line. And so, right? So now my code, only has this statement in there once, and then we print a blank line, right? If I want to add more animals, it's real easy because all I do is just copy this smaller block of code, and it's easier to maintain because I just swap out the animal and the sound, and I can add as many verses as I want, and it's really, really simple, okay? So when we look at this, so execution, right? So it goes here and it just goes up and does E-I-E-I-O and hada and then witha and then E-I-E-I-O again and a blank line and so on for every single verse. But when we look at this code, right, there's something still that doesn't sit right with me because I still have the same block of code getting repeated over and over again. It's like, yes, it's better, but there's still a lot of repetition. So let me put this to the side and let's take a look at one more version. And so this time, right, so I didn't change the EIEIO and the WITHA and the HATA didn't change at all. But I added an additional function that handles an entire verse. And so the sing it function takes an animal and a sound as arguments, and then it says, go do EIEIO, and then do the HATA with whatever animal gets passed in, do the WITHA with that whatever sound gets passed in, and do the EIEIO again, and then print a blank line. And so let's look at how simple this makes adding additional verses. Right, so here's the execution. All right, so I got my functions. The very first line is the title gets printed. Okay, and then we go do the sing it function, and duck gets passed into the animal, and quack gets passed into the sound. And so it does EIEIO, and then when this finishes, it comes back down here, and it goes up to HATA with the duck, and when that finishes, it comes down here, and it does WITHA with the quack, and it does these two statements, and when WITHA is finished, it comes down and it does EIEIO again, and it prints. And now the sing it function has completed all 5 lines of code inside, right? So this sing it is done, and so then it goes on to the next sing it function. And so this time we pass in cow and moo, and then it does EIEIO, and had a cow, and with a moo, and then EIEIO again, prints a blank line, and sing it's completed again. And we move on to the next, and the same thing happens, and then we move on to the next, and the same thing happens. And so at this point, the program is, we've actually, we could add lots and lots of animals, and the code actually is becoming shorter by breaking it up into functions. And also, it is much, much easier to maintain because, right, there's almost no code, you don't have to go digging through lines and lines of code to find every little subtle change you need to make. Just swapping out one line of code, swapping out the animal and the sound, and you're done. So what I have for you to do as an exercise is complete 2 more songs and just try to do it in the same model. So I have a Hokey Pokey song, and this is structured basically the same way as the Old MacDonald version 2, where I have a sing it that does a verse, and then I broke the verse into the different parts. And what I want you to do is each time you see a pass statement, right, this just means there's going to be a print statement or a function call, and just take the pass statements out and put in print statements or function calls so that by the time you run this program, it sings several verses of the song Hokey Pokey. And the other one I gave you, and this one is just slightly more challenging, okay, because I left more code out for you to do yourself. But again, take out the pass statements and make it sing the song of The Ants Go Marching. And so, and if you don't know the lyrics to the song, all right, there's a link in the assignment and you can look at that. All right. And it should be reasonably clear how this works. Children's songs are good for this kind of activity because they have a lot of repetition. So, all right, I guess download the code and, see what you can figure out. And if you have any questions, let me know.